Hi there, Deb here. Finally getting around to talking about my decision to have TPLOs done on both Takoda's knees. And the first one was done 21 weeks ago, the second one 13 weeks ago. So here's what led up to this. I'm going to start very much at the beginning. And when Takoda was a tiny puppy, there was something about his rear that I didn't like, and I couldn't pinpoint it. And so I took video and stacked photos and sent them to experts in the field of canine agility. I mean, these were veterinary doctors. And nobody saw anything amiss, so I thought, okay, that's just weirdness on my part. And it could have been. It could have nothing to do with anything. So fast forward, at a year old, he had a pretty bad knee sprain in the backyard on slippery ice. Like 2 seconds I was inside probably getting coffee. A rarity that he would be outside, but he was hopping on 3 legs, and it turned out he had a bad sprain. He was sedated for the x-ray, so I assume they did a drawer test and that it was negative, but I can't be sure. So it's possible he did some damage to his CCL ligament back then, but unknown. So fast forward a few more years, and the next event was him getting attacked by a certified search and rescue dog right after I moved here to California. Of course, that was shocking to me, having come from front range rescue dogs, which a dog couldn't even get in the queue for testing if they didn't show a good solid temperament and no aggressive tendencies. Anyway, he recovered well from that. So fast forward again. I guess I have to say one more note is I did have him neutered shortly after that attack, because my vet said that that having an intact male will create potential aggression from neutered males, and so many dogs were like running up to him from far away that I thought, well, maybe that will stop some of that, and I'm not sure that it did, but anyway, so he was neutered then. And I know that Chris Zink has done a study showing that tendon and ligament issues are more common in neutered and spayed dogs than they are in intact dogs. So that's just something, I've been trying to keep him intact for a number of reasons. I was having no problems with him being intact, except for the interests of other dogs, perhaps. Fast forward again. And one of his weaker spots was the speed of his weaving. And I remember somebody making an offhand comment, oh, you can fix that, you can train that. And I thought, right, I can train that, I can speed him up. So I did some stuff, sped up his weaving, and then he just looked not quite right moving in life. And I couldn't pinpoint what didn't look right, but I thought, you know what? He is weaving the way he's weaving for a reason, a physical reason. I'm going to let him do it the way he wants to do it. And what I was noticing is he just wasn't powering from the rear while weaving. The rear was just kind of bouncing back and forth versus pushing off hard. So that's why he was going slower, and that's what I sped up, and that's what didn't look right. So again, no concern beyond just that's the way he weaves, no problem. Then a couple years later, I was filming my run on a tripod, so I had to hit start before I went all the way down to the other end of the ring to enter. And so I happened to capture the run of the team in front of us. And what was interesting when I watched those 2 videos is these 2 dogs, Takoda and this other dog, ran the course stride for stride. It was almost like they had identical stride lengths, jumping arcs, everything was the same, but this dog, over the course of 20 obstacles or so, picked up a couple of seconds because he was powering out of the turns faster. So coincidentally, I was at a trial with that person who is they've been on the world team, and this is a world team dog too. And I said, oh, I happen to get this video, and your dog picks up time a little bit every time he powers out of a turn. And so this person said to me, well, he used to not. And she was studying with somebody in Europe, and that person said, hey, you're losing time there. And so he encouraged her to work on more powering out of turns. Fast forward again. This person and that dog ended up with a partial tear, well, the dog did, in CCL, and ended up having TPLO. And this is at about the same time that I was kind of wondering, like, gosh, is something off with Takoda? Because he just lacked his usual power when running courses. And none of my friends could see anything. And I couldn't pinpoint it either, other than I could see in his facial expression that he was full on in the game, and yet something was just a little bit less powerful from him. So that's what led me to do slow-mo videos of cone wrapping, and that's when I noticed occasionally he was holding up his left rear leg. Sometimes anticipating going into the turn, he'd hold up that leg, and other times holding it up one rep, one running rep, stride rep around. And so then I started reflecting back on how long this has been going on. And because I videotape a lot of stuff for my ocean course, I went back and he was doing that for a long time. And also he had changed from kind of running around cones, so turning in a running stride, slightly rear foot separation, to doing kind of swinging his butt and bunny hopping around. And that bunny hopping thing made for tight turns, and I actually thought that was just, his way of powering out. But now I look back and think, nope, that was his way of coping with discomfort. So anyway, so I get 3 different orthopedic specialist opinions, and the first one said, yeah, he needs TPLO on both legs. And the second 2 were like, well, we're not quite sure. The drawer movement was either slight or non-existent. They couldn't really pinpoint it. And I think the reason for that, looking back, is that I caught this so early compared to when most people catch this, that you would not notice anything wrong with this dog, other than if you really, really knew him, like we know our own dogs, you would sense slight less power, and maybe somebody would go, oh, that's just my dog getting older, my dog's not that into it, whatever. But with Takoda, I really suspected it was physical. So after the third, I guess I ended up with 4 opinions, because at the clinic I went to have the surgery, the best place in Northern California, there happened to be 2 or 3 different doctors who I asked, can you all just like put your hands on him and tell me what you feel? Does he have drawer movement or does he not? Each time, if he was sedated, there was slight drawer movement. If he was not sedated, no drawer movement. So this is just a little note to people who have had their dogs seen by orthopedic specialists, and if they're not under sedation, the dog is going to be able to hold strong and mask slight drawer movement. Anyway, so now it's been confirmed that yes, there's slight drawer movement. He has arthritis in the right leg. That's the one that had the sprain, and they anticipated he'd get arthritis. So again, I'm thinking maybe it's to do with the sprain, not to do with this. And the vet and I decided we're going to do 5 weeks of cold laser, and I'm going to keep him on leash, for controlled movement, and do some real basic PT exercises. And after 5 weeks, they looked at him again, and he still had the same amount of fluid buildup in both knees, which wasn't excessive, but it was unusual for a healthy 6-year-old dog to have any kind of swelling in his knees. So at that point, they're saying, well, there's nothing urgent about this. Again, watching this dog, you'd see nothing was wrong. They said you can have MRIs done to confirm that, there's ligament disease or not. And so I just thought about it and went, I can spend $2,000 and get MRIs, but the 5-week test was intended to give me clarity about whether or not Takoda has healthy ligaments or unhealthy ligaments. And I decided I think I can save the $2,000 and just schedule the TPLO. So first leg was done, the one with the symptoms that he was holding up occasionally, and 8 weeks later the other leg was done. And the difference between the 2 legs in terms of post-op, night and day. That left leg, the one with the symptoms, he didn't want to put it down for, it was barely toe touching for the first week, maybe even longer. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to do some healing work with him so that he actually puts it down. And I think once that happened, he realized, oh, this didn't hurt as much as I thought. And so that leg started progressing, but it really was slower than what you'd expect. Then the second leg, 8 weeks later, that he was putting it down the day I picked him up, the day after surgery, and he was walking on it from the beginning. And the recovery for that leg was super fast. I spent a lot of time and focus on range of motion, making sure he had full range of motion. And I think he had lost a little bit of range of motion in that right leg way back with the sprain, but I thought, I'm going to take the opportunity of him being on such limited movement and being on pain meds at the beginning to get that full range of motion back in that right leg, which I was able to do, and now he's got great full range of motion. And so here we are 13 weeks out on that second TPLO, and he is looking really, really good. That some of the abnormalities I'd see when he started fatiguing are gone. We're just starting to add trotting. We're going for long walks. Along the way, I decided, since we're going to be doing so many leash walks, I'm going to see if I can't figure out why he won't walk at a loose leash. Figured that out. Now he has learned to walk faster than I didn't even know he could walk this fast, because he was a perpetual trotter. He rarely walked. And so now he walks as fast as I can walk. So to get him into a trot, he's got to be, on a real long line and, shooting back and forth, which it's not happening yet, but I've been warned by everybody who's had TPLOs done on their dogs that do not rush it, to really take your time, because you don't want to get what's called pivot shift. And that's where the TPLO basically keeps the tibia from moving forward, but it doesn't keep it from rotating. And if the meniscus is affected, and if something else is happening, and blah, 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 that you can get this really awkward looking rotation of the stifle joint. And Takoda does not have that. And going back to my decision, had any of these vets told me, or maybe they did tell me and I didn't hear it because I didn't understand what they were saying, but had I known that the advantage of doing an early TPLO is that you will avoid that potential pivot shift because the ligament is still intact and doing its job, keeping things from rotating, I would not have even probably waited the 5 weeks to be more sure that he needed it. I would have just done it, because that is not something that looks good, and I can't imagine that long term is good, or that a dog would be able to return to agility if they're having that weird, and it's very, very awkward looking. So just to wrap this up, it's been a really interesting 10 months, from thinking something is wrong with my dog, to getting all the opinions from specialists, to doing the surgery, and to now seeing that he is really looking good. And so for me, this was the right decision for my dog, getting it done super early. And I guess, I don't want to freak anyone out, but if your dog is losing power, if your dog is 6 or 7 and you think, oh, my dog's getting old, I'm not saying he's got a CCL partial tear or anything, but take some slow-mo videos of your dog doing something and see what you see. That I think there are a lot of dogs who have subtle injuries that it's not age that is causing them to slow down, that it is pain or discomfort or compensation for some kind of injury. Because I was just watching a whole bunch of runs from a regional trial, and I looked at some of these dogs that I remember seeing a couple years ago. I'm like, that dog does not look good anymore. And I know the dog is not older than 7.5, maybe 8. So I guess if you are trying to get the most longevity out of your agility dog's career, that it might be worthwhile to do some slow-mo video, and to also do some real basic foundation physical therapy type of things, which will show you discomfort. Because one thing that was very clear with Takoda during the 5-week test period when I was deciding is his stand to sit didn't look good, and he had a really hard time going stand to down. So he was fine pushing off back up, but it was really hard for him to go down. And I do think that that was related to the discomfort he was feeling. So there you have it. This is the update, and Takoda's doing great, and it was the right decision for us. So the end of the TPLO story.